Alright guys, Kremp again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, with OpTic desperately needing some sort of revival if they want to turn their season around. Dashy has been spotted using the JACL, the SMG weapon in the game, to rather great effect. A gun that Dashy could potentially use to great success. Could Kenny become the full-time main AR for the team? Dashy could then go to the flex role. Is there something else that OpTic need to try, if not a player swap as well? Then maybe Dashy's preparing for some last case, last result scenario, because the last time that Dashy ran an SMG in COD, it didn't necessarily go to plan. Very much enjoyed to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. We're going to start here. Pretty interesting from Hastro. If you guys aren't aware, Envy is back. Envy was dormant. It was dead for many years. And as of late, they've signed a couple of teams. Marvel Rivals, they've got other things going on. Like, they signed various teams and players. I mean, it's a great branding, right? Like, I love the Envy branding. Great organization back in the day, and even including the Dallas Empire days, they of course had incredible success in Call of Duty, making the most like World Championship Grand Finals, winning the most World Championships, stuff like this in COD. And of course, as they said, we aren't done yet, not even close at the end of February. So what's going on with Envy? Is it time for a return to Call of Duty? Well, Hastro actually mentions that explicitly in a tweet yesterday, saying the following: for the first time in 19 years, which is wild, I'm not playing, coaching, or owning or operating a tier 1 Call of Duty team. It has been a real family. It's crazy, like, the fact that COD was out in like 2006 and Hastro was playing COD as a player for a few years before and had some success before then, owning, operating, coaching, creating his own Call of Duty team, then all the success that Envy had for several years, of course culminating in a 2016 World Championship win. They did it again in 2020 when they were under the Dallas Empire brand, and they were a mainstay of COD for many years. Now, I think Envy as a brand was always in a difficult spot because they never prioritized the content, right? They were all about winning. That was like their whole modus operandi, is that, okay, OpTic, sure, have your podcast, we're here to win. And often, OpTic ended up doing both, and Envy did sometimes neither, but sometimes they would win, and I liked their approach as an organization. Unfortunately, with the way that esports and content and media has gone, that approach maybe isn't, maybe it was never going to work, and there was always going to be some degree of consolidation necessary. But Hastro, he knows how to run a business, right? Envy was able to raise a lot of funding, a lot of finance over that period, to such an extent that they were effectively the savior for OpTic when they were struggling, parted ways with NRG. Of course, it was Infinite Esports, Immortals were involved, NRG were involved, and then effectively Envy became OpTic, the headquarters was rebranded, and they partnered in that sense, and we don't really know what Hastro did over the last few years. But in the last couple of months, Hastro has been able to reacquire the Envy branding. Not really sure what that means for the way that OpTic has gone, but Hastro is trying to bring it back anyway. This was maybe never a massive surprise that the OpTic Envy merger wouldn't maybe end after a couple of years, as maybe people hope that it might. But as Hastro says, it's been a family. You all changed my life for the better, gave me friendships and love I will cherish forever. Maybe we can get back into the fray someday. Just wanted to say thanks. So Hastro is explicitly talking about Call of Duty again, and there has been a big question about this over the last few days as to whether Envy back into COD makes some sense. In challenges, they could pick up a team. Would they get any return on investment from that team? Probably not. But are there teams in the league that could sell the spot? Still, I think there are a couple of teams that may consider that. I think Boston was semi-close last year. Of course, Ravens, you'd have thought, might have done so as well. Some of the other poverty organisations, though, are out of there now. There might be options, and also expansion at this point might not be that far away. Like, there are other organisations interested in getting into competitive Call of Duty. We've seen it over the last couple of years, but as I say, we had so many like poverty orgs. They've been bought out first, and now maybe it's about time that expansion could be a viable option, especially because you're not going to have to pay $25 million to get in, because the franchise element is effectively dead. So could Dallas Empire Envy come back in some form? Hastro is certainly hinting at it. Plenty else to get into as well, just to look at some of the players playing in 8s. Yeah, I always keep an eye on this, just because I find it interesting who's grinding and who's not. Drazah's always grinding. Drazah, Hook, Hyde, and Paul X. Dashy, Shotzzy, Illy, and Skyz. That was one interesting team. And then obviously Dashy and Shotzzy are in them a lot. Pred is sometimes. As we said before, Kenny never really plays them, and maybe that's okay if you're winning. You know, that's the debate. And then Hook played with Encourage, and Kremp and HyDra's back against Standy and Kismet to kind of round out the day on that front. But OpTic, of course, they've got their event coming up very soon. How are they going to do back at the, you know, the event venue where they won the World Championship a few months ago? Just to note real quick, this is, of course, a picture of the venue. I'm not exactly 100% sure what setup they're going to run again this year for Major 2, because last year at Champs, many of you guys I'm sure were there in attendance, as was I. Actually, you guys might be able to see where I was, kind of thing. I think this light here was where our watch party setup was on the balcony. So that's pretty much where we were. This was Zuma's one, this was Scump's one further down. Good memories, good times, and sensational events. 7,000 odd seater arena in a circular venue. We've very, very rarely done that in competitive Call of Duty, and people therefore might expect, you know, to do it again. OpTic are just going to run it back the same way as before, the same setup and everything. There were advantages and disadvantages. Doing it a central stage can be great for the fans, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I think there was an element on the right-hand side here, like in the VIP section, where the booms for like holding the cameras and stuff were kind of getting in the way of some of the fans' views. That was definitely a complaint that people had during the course of the weekends, and totally understandably, because if you paid for VIP seats and they're actually like the worst seats in the venue because you can't see anything, that was a problem. And maybe that's inherent to the way that they designed things and set it up with the central stage. It's also more complicated to execute. Backstage is all the way over here, and the production side maybe is more complicated. So there's just been some discussion that this year they might not do the central stage. It might be back to something a bit more traditional, and maybe that's okay. But we'll see what they decide to do, I guess, when everything kicks off officially in a couple of weeks' time. We start to see the venue pictures, but I think maybe Hex mentioned it on a podcast that it might not be exactly the same setup as they ran last year, and maybe that's fine. And maybe having a proper stage opens the door to do the ring ceremony up on the stage, and that, of course, is what Dashy and the OpTic guys are looking forward to getting their, the rings on their fingers, basically. It's going to be an interesting one, seeing the guys come out there, assuming that they're maybe starting in the losers bracket, and time will tell. Will they be, though? Well, it's not looking great. They're currently 0 in 3 in the qualifiers, 0 in 9 map counts, but they've not played 4 maps, or 4 series yet. They will have played 4 by the end of Saturday, because they play Miami the upcoming weekends, and then it's Toronto, and the weekend after it's Thieves and Gorillas. So it's a difficult run. If OpTic can get 3 wins and 3 comfortable wins, they could be in with a shot of making the winners bracket. If they can get 4 wins, they make it to the winners bracket. But of course, that involves beating Thieves, which they did, let's not forget. You guys remember when Kenny clutched the 1 versus 2 against HyDra and Envoy on Hacienda Search and Destroy against Thieves to win the Game 5 Round 11? Does that not feel like rather a long time ago for OpTic fans and just in the CDL in general? Lots of things have changed since then. But this is Dashy on, Bounty.
Or 2 there.
Wait, I'm reloading.
No. Look where I'm going, Jelly. You're in?
Uh-oh. No.
Yeah, I
just
just
fucking
We're good for 2.
In the back there's one shot for you. Overheat.
Yeah. No, I've won.
Putting in some serious work with the SMG in hand, with the JACKAL. Now, yeah, the pros nerfed the JACKAL. They got rid of some of the attachments. Is it still very good? Yeah. Is it still probably the best gun? Possibly, yeah. And look, Dashy is a pro player. Obviously, he's going to be able to shoot straight. But he's moving, right? Like, he's sliding around corners. He's taking chows. He's not setting up on a head glitch. And this has been my question for the last couple of weeks, really, to OpTic. Has been like, okay, why, what are they going to try? Are they going to try anything? Are they going to try something? Like, what sort of role changes might be, like, nice to consider? Because blowing up the team that won the World Championship, especially when you go to all this effort to get Pred back after whatever happened, to make sure that team can be reformed, maybe the feeling was that with Hook, they knew that their potential wasn't as high as it was with Pred. They decided to bring it back, but obviously they have had some issues executing on that. My opinion has been now for probably 3 weeks, they should at least try Kenny to the sub and Pred to the flex. I think you might not think that's a good idea, but you know, you got to try something, right? I think that was my opinion 3 weeks ago, and now it's very much true that I think something needs to be tried. Now, could Dashy run the sub, or at least the flex? Is it possible that you could say, because Kenny just looks very, very uncomfortable on the map, and I think that at times that's hurt by the fact that he's on that flex role. He is swapping guns on occasion. It doesn't really seem like he knows what he should be doing with the AR in hands. I think Dashy knows what he should be doing. Get the hill time, right? You know, lock in, set up on a heady. The flex is, you know, really the hardest role. And in this game, it actually is usually a flex. You could call it the second AR, but the decision-making in that moment can be more challenging. Whereas if you're on a sub, typically you just run it down, especially you're playing with Shotzzy. You just run it down and you chow with him and you take the space. Like, it's not really rocket science sometimes. Or the main AR role, obviously it takes some IQ, and Kenny does have in-game IQ. Some of the highest in COD history, to be honest. But right now, I don't know, he switched off or something, I don't really understand. But could it be possible to consider, okay, Dashy could run the sub or the flex at least? I don't think you're putting Dashy on a full-time sub, and then Kenny could become the full-time main. That's an option that I'd not really considered before, but it might be something worth considering. It would make a minor, subtle adjustment to the team, but it's something that's worth keeping in mind. Now, Dashy, as I said at the start of the video, did run a sub at some point, famously during, it was MW19, when Dashy was on OGLA, and that game was 4 MP5s and an M4, and there was Slasher on the team, so he was basically going to be the main. They debated it a bit, but eventually Dashy said, all right, you know what, I'll run the sub, and it didn't really go to plan. I don't think, in the same way that Octane, you know, Subtane, Sorgtane, whatever you want to call it, was never looking good. Like, whenever you watched Octane's POV with an SMG, it didn't really work. Something was off about it because of the way that he liked to play the game, and that was fine. Dashy, I think, can do it. He probably could do it reasonably well. His best games have tended to be the games where he's playing at some serious pace. I mean, BO4 obviously is a great example of exactly that. He was not the main AR back in BO4. So is this something that you guys would try? Very much intrigued to your thoughts, as always, on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time. 2-time world champion Octane, 1-time world champion Zuma, 0-time world champion, talking all this about how OpTic are making mistakes. You know, OpTic considering them in the same conversation, because it seems to be, if they're talking about, you know, people thinking they're ESPN analysts and not playing the game and think they know what OpTic need to do to try and win, maybe they were talking about Crim6 initially, now not so much, and Enable, mostly in those conversations, but surely it also applies elsewhere as well. It just, you've got a...
Man, TacticalRab, you know what, TacticalRab? You know what? Last time we played football, some footy, I embarrassed you in your own country sport. All right? That's your country sport. That's supposed to be your sport. And I embarrassed you. I embarrassed you, TacticalRab. Last time I checked, you had a little cut on your foot. You had a little baby call. You had a little baby call. Brother, you couldn't handle me on a pitch, brother. You couldn't handle me on